This is Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
It's the Morning Majlis. Talking the stories that are shaping headlines, plus those that make you go,
Hello, good morning, and welcome back onto the Morning Majlis, second hour of the show, and it is going to be a meaty one. We'll have to promise you that, and it is going to be a packed show for those who prefer vegan options. But we're talking about the idea of how we are going to be combating the spread of COVID-19, because later on in the program we're going to be speaking to the team at G42 Healthcare who've been conducting the vaccine trials in collaboration with the UAE Ministry of Health, in collaboration with Sinopharm in China. We're into the phase 3 of the clinical trial, so all your questions about that vaccine will be addressed to them, so do send us your questions if you've got any on 4215. But we'll also be talking a little bit more about how Indians are hoping for Kamala Harris to take over and win the vice presidential bid because of her Indian origins. So we'll be talking about that, what's happening in India. She's been gathering a lot of support in India for sure, but lots more to look forward to, Ahmed Dawood, when it comes to how Wuhan is now partying it up.
Yes, indeed. The ground zero for the coronavirus pandemic, and the region that had undergone the world's first and arguably the strictest lockdown has flung back to normalcy, and people are having large-scale pool parties. What are they doing? How did they reach this point? A lot of lessons to glean, a lot of interesting topics to discuss surrounding this. So stay tuned as we discuss Wuhan's transition back into normalcy and so much more.
Yeah, and also the UAE has been witnessing an alarming increase in daily coronavirus cases. Up to date, we have had a total of 64,906 cases, 366 total deaths. 6,631 are still active cases as we speak. So we will discuss and unveil what really led to this sudden increase after we have sustained it and really were in control of it, and even started opening responsibly again, better than a lot of other nations in the world. So we will talk about what really caused it and what the UAE health authorities are advising citizens and residents to do, and the laws and regulations and guidelines to abide by in order for us to control this increase again and lead to a decrease again.
That's right. And join us by texting at 4215 if you have any questions regarding the coronavirus vaccine trials being conducted in Abu Dhabi and here in Sharjah as well by G42 and the pharmaceutical firm from China, Sinopharm. Let us know. Text us at 4215. We're also live on YouTube. Type Pulse 95 in the search bar and you could see our lovely faces.
We certainly will be. Yeah, catch the visual experience of the Morning Majlis every day live on Pulse 95, our YouTube account, and we'll be right back. In fact, we'll take a bit of a breather, and then up next we're talking about the ground zero of the COVID-19, how it has gone back to normality, and what's worse is there was no face mask in sight. What's going on? All this will be discussed right here on the Morning Majlis.
This is Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
It's the Morning Majlis.
The story is from Wuhan, the ground zero of the coronavirus pandemic, and the city that had undergone the world's strictest lockdown amid the emergence of the coronavirus has been returning to normalcy. In fact, it seems to have moved on entirely as thousands of partygoers gathered in an open-air water park for a festival. No masks, no social distancing, just people shoulder to shoulder, dancing and having a good time.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I'm just baffled.
I'm looking at the picture.
I'm baffled. Literally, This is not cool, to be honest, in terms of what's going on, because a city that went through the brunt of it. We saw horrifying images of the lockdowns. We had horrifying images of people singing the Chinese national anthem and even singing their festive songs from their own balconies as the entire blocks and entire districts were in strict lockdown in Wuhan. There were people with face masks everywhere, deserted corners, and now it's as if nothing happened.
Yeah. But that's just alarming because, I mean, do you think that they will get another wave of coronavirus cases now after this?
Look, we haven't fought off the virus.
Yeah.
That's bottom line.
That's the thing.
That's that.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in New Zealand when they had no locally transmitted cases for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then they were back again and they had to go down into lockdown. Auckland, to be precise.
Yeah.
And this water park receives an average of 15,000 daily visitors during weekends. So that's a big number.
Well, New Zealand, has had no locally transmitted cases for more than 3 months, which certainly puts alarm to this as well. In social media in China, a lot of commenters expressed surprise that such a large-scale event was allowed to take place in Wuhan. Some alarm also expressed on the social media channels, Twitter and Facebook as well. Some people expressing that concern about the possibility of a second wave of infection, even occurring from elsewhere as well as one of the possibilities here. Wuhan itself hasn't had any local coronavirus cases since May, and about 9.9 million people in the city have been tested for the virus as part of an aggressive testing measure in place. So far, there are no bans on large gatherings in Wuhan. And elsewhere, the virus continues to rage, and countries like South Korea are facing a new wave of cases as well. So it may be a long time before other countries feel as confident in allowing crowded events to resume.
Yeah, true. And obviously we've seen China itself had 89,000 cases, and we saw deaths in China for 4,705 for being the epicenter of the COVID-19 and where it is believed that it first emerged, and how far it has spread to countries such as the United States. 5 million cases. And it is a deadly disease, and it's not ideal in terms of what's happened, and I think it should have been a bit more of a responsible behavior from Wuhan. Even though they started to lift and ease lockdown restrictions in March and officially started doing that and completely by the 8th of April, neither the city, Wuhan or Hebei province have reported the locally transmitted cases of COVID-19 for 3 months, officially declared a city free of the virus. Good thing is they tested the 10 million people that live in the city, so majority of the people have been tested. But still, it takes only one tragedy or one tragic event or an influx of a case to really damage and cause a lot of damage, or even cause a little bit of a second or a third wave, to be precise. But it is for a person like me. I'm disappointed. I know they wouldn't care about my opinion, but still, it is. It's horrifying.
Yeah, from being the epicenter of the pandemic, now they're throwing this
and
huge.
Surely, as a city, you must be traumatized for what you've gone through.
Right.
That city lost thousands of people, and they were in a bit of a mess when it first emerged. There was no answers. Yes, China was very, very quick in responding, saying field hospitals done. The next day, thousands
76-day lockdown.
76-day lockdown.
Yeah.
You would still have the aftershocks in you of what's happened. But I guess this is the way that the city wants to move on, and wanted to celebrate with a bit of a pool party. And I'm sure a lot of people will have mixed opinions and would be still horrified by what's going on. If you'd like to share your opinions, and if you are in favour of a pool party that Wuhan did, or against...
Music festival.
Yeah, music festival. If you were for or against, let us know on the text lines 4215. Bearing in mind that the city's declared itself virus-free for the last 3 months, but do you think it was okay for them to do this? Let us know on the text line 4215. We'll be right back after a short interval. Before we quickly move on to more discussions across the globe, particularly when it comes to the elections in the United States. Stay tuned to Pulse 95.
This is Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
It's the Morning Majlis. It's the Morning Majlis.
UAE government briefing spokesperson Dr. Umar Al-Hammadi has spoken on the state of coronavirus infections in the United Arab Emirates and noted that unfortunately we have seen an increase in the number of daily cases. He noted that this increase was alarming. And this increase is notable because compared to the previous weeks, it's somewhat more significant. A daily increase of around 136 cases among both citizens and residents has been recorded. And that Hammadi said that most of these cases were caused by gatherings resulting from family and social visits, with people not complying with the precautionary measures such as social distancing and wearing masks. Al-Hammadi urged the public that for anybody who's going to go to sports facilities, especially to go to or closed spaces, they shouldn't go to them if they feel any symptoms. Al-Hammadi also noted the importance of leaving a distance of at least 2 meters with others, to wear masks, and regularly sterilize your hands before and after using shared devices. And this is a particularly important point. We're seeing a lot of sports being played, a lot of gyms being opened, and people working out like nothing is going on. And that aspect has been noted during the media briefing, the risk of acquiring infection in sports.
Yeah, right. The risk of acquiring infection increases as a sport includes a greater number of participants. For example, tennis is not as dangerous as basketball, and team sports such as football are likely or more likely to spread the infection than individual sports such as solo running and weightlifting. So Dr. Al-Hammadi is saying that sports practitioners breathe more intensely than others, which increases the chance of transmitting the virus through droplets coming out of them to others. So it is necessary to adhere to wearing a mask in the absence of the element of physical distancing. And on the other hand, that claim that a commercial product is not harmful to human health does not mean that the product is effective for treating certain diseases.
It is worrying when a Minister of Health has been pinpointing sports and recreational facilities in particular. That gives us a little bit of an alarm bell for most gyms that you've got to follow the precautions, because initially there was. And it still is in practice in most gyms, but there has been a lapse. A lot of this is human nature. People tend to relax on a few things a bit more, especially when it comes to temperature checks, making sure that people are wearing masks, making sure that there is no contact. Certain gyms continue to do that, follow those precautions, limiting the number of people in a class, and limiting a number of people per, or limiting the capacity, operating at 50% capacity, or even 30% capacity. But certain gyms now begin to ease, thinking, okay, it's fine. You don't have to wear masks because the authorities say for rigorous exercises you don't have to. You got to be careful, and the increased risk of infections also being pinpointed on gatherings and people not following the social distancing measures. The government taught us in 3 months of the National Disinfection Program of how to distance yourself properly. Then they let it on us, saying you are responsible, and there is a national campaign, #WeAreAllResponsible.
Yeah.
So it's now down to us if we want to be silly and continue with these big gatherings and not following the instructions given by the authorities, because look, the risk of the COVID-19 is still there, and we don't tend to accept it until it hits home, because for many of us it remains a number. Sadly, myself have lost 2 members of my family due to COVID-19 very recently as well.
Oh my gosh.
So it sort of hits you, when you see that it just doesn't become a number, it becomes a person from your own life, and how that particular patient contracted the virus was through work. Turning up to work, and during the Hajj season as well, and things just don't go according to what you imagined. So you've got to make sure that you have those, let's say, instructions in place. If the HR of an entity, if the health and safety officers of an entity are responsible for this, temperature checks mandatory. Do not go lapse on them. Do not go lazy on them as well. Make sure that you continue to do that. Thermal checks, if you've got those in place, make sure they continue going. Do not relax yourself, because look, the virus is still there.
Absolutely.
The threat still remains.
Yeah.
Vaccine still hasn't been found.
And our fight against COVID-19 will not be complete unless we all comply to precautionary measures.
Yep, exactly.
And this worrying surge in the daily average number of new COVID-19 cases in the UAE is really due to the lack of compliance with those safety measures put by health officials. So all our UAE health officials are urging all residents and Emiratis to avoid gatherings, wear face masks, and maintain physical distancing to prevent further infections, and that is the bottom line.
That is the bottom line.
And minimize sports activities as well. That's a major facet to this as well. It's practically impossible to remain safe during a sports game with heavy breathing and the inability to wear masks due to profuse sweating as well. So those contact sports, football, think about your friends, your family. You might be okay with being infected. We've heard that quite a bit because you're young and healthy, but the people you come in contact with, or your the relatives or your friends' loved ones, they might contract the infection and not survive. So that's definitely a major aspect to this, to be mindful of the role you play, your surroundings, where you can go, and don't go to places that don't follow precautions.
True. Another aspect that we can talk about is, look, it is human nature. As soon as you see things relaxing, if we just saw in Wuhan, they just had a big party.
Right.
People are thinking, yeah, the virus is gone. There is a general trend, and this is more alarming, and I heard it from, shout out to my barber again. Whenever we have this conversation, he knows I work in news media, and he talks to me about it. And I tell him, you know what, it's still there. And he's like, coronavirus's strength is over.
Yeah.
And that's what he says. And he says, I think the power is gone of the virus.
Yeah.
We fought it off, it's not true. The threat of the virus still remains. And authorities have done their utmost to... And
it's difficult to change the mindset of people that think that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It definitely is. And people,
so it is alarming.
The authorities have even had to resort to naming and shaming those individuals who were positive cases and decided to wander off and leave their own homes, thinking it's fine. 14 days is too much to ask for me to stay indoors. What else you want?
It's good to stay optimistic, but it's not good to be careless.
That is, I don't think we need to say anything more. Don't think we need to say anything more. What a perfect way to summarize it. And we'll leave it at that. We will be talking about this quest for that vaccine to fight the spread of COVID-19, because up next we've got the team at G42 Healthcare who are going to give us an update in terms of what's happening at Qarayan Health Centre. They're going to give us an update in terms of how efficiently this vaccine being trialled in the United Arab Emirates works. Stay tuned to Pulse 95. Right after the news headlines, we've got that discussion lined up for you.
This is Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
It's the Morning Majlis.
Hello and welcome back onto the Morning Majlis. The world is awaiting the first COVID-19 vaccine to combat the spread of COVID-19 and also to fight off the virus should it attack a human. We are doing clinical trials across the globe. According to the World Health Organization, over 6 vaccines are in the phase 3 clinical trial. One of them, the one initiated by Russia, has gone past and been approved, but we're focusing our attention on the one here in the United Arab Emirates, the phase 3 trials. And to talk to us more about this, Ashish Koshy, the CEO of G42 Healthcare, has joined us on the lines. He's a very busy man, so we're very fortunate to catch him because he's been traveling a lot. A very good morning to you, Ashish.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's start with a big question. How does this vaccine work? We've heard a lot of talks about how different ways it might work, but to break it down, give it a bit of a concrete response to them, how does this vaccine being trialled in the United Arab Emirates work on a human body?
Sure. So vaccines typically, help develop immunity in individuals by sort of imitating an infection. So there are multiple ways in which one can imitate that immunity. The one that we're using here is one of the most safest mechanism because it's an inactivated virus. The other pharmas that you mentioned are doing on phase 3 trials are doing on other versions of that. The way it works, it develops immunity by building antibodies, and that's the purpose behind this vaccination trial, to measure the level of antibodies generated in these volunteers and to see how long it's going to last.
And what's been happening so far? Because our target was to get 15,000 volunteers. We've seen this taking place in Qarayan Health Centre in Sharjah. Talk to us about how the response has been from the UAE residents, because we've moved on to Bahrain as well. So let's focus on, are we getting those 15,000 volunteers? Are we reaching that target?
Absolutely. So just last week we announced the phase 3 trials of the UAE here in UAE had reached 15,000 volunteers at ADNEC alone in less than a month. And when I say it has reached 15,000 volunteers, we've already vaccinated 15,000 volunteers. And the best part of that, beyond our imagination, we've got volunteers from 107 different nationalities. And it's been a truly heartening experience to see the entire response from the residents, locals, every person from this nation. And in comparison to the other phase 3 trials, we are far ahead. And it's a true testament to it can happen only in the UAE.
Mr. Ashish, G42 Healthcare has just recently announced a volunteer healthcare management program with U.S. wearable technology firm Whoop to monitor the health and fitness of those taking part in those trials. Can you elaborate more on the monitoring process of that?
Sure, absolutely. So what we are offering the volunteers, because we are focused on safety and health monitoring and as part of the clinical trial endpoint, every volunteer who comes for the second dose can opt voluntary for a wearable which monitors their sleep rate, heart rate variability. They can monitor their own statistics. And then in case of any spikes, come back and result, because you have access to a 24/7 support. So not just if anything happens, God forbid, asymptomatically, they can report it in advance. So what Whoop does, it monitors your data continuously, and it is far accurate when compared to the other wearable technologies.
So it's
Group 42 Health. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, so it's mandatory for all the volunteers to wear this fitness tracker all the time?
Absolutely. No, it is not mandatory.
Okay.
It is completely optional for the volunteer to opt for that.
Okay.
Now, continuing with this discussion in terms of if I were to come in and volunteer, surely I'll have a little bit of jitters in terms of what's happening with my side effects and stuff. So how, if you were to talk to them in terms of what happens, you're saying there's going to be 2 shots over the course of 21 days. How does this whole volunteering work?
So the breakdown in terms of the volunteer workflow is pretty straightforward. You could walk into ADNEC Center or the Sharjah Center, or even to a resident in Bahrain to the center there. The day 0 starts when he visits the center. He registers with his local ID. They do a general health check and do a PCR test to ensure that the person at that particular time is not PCR positive, and they measure his baseline antibodies. And if everything is okay, past the jitters, they get the first dose on day 0. The next dose is on day 21. And during that time, there is a multiple teleconsulting and also face-to-face meeting at the center to measure any sort of spikes and to measure baselines across these days. So in terms of dose, it's on day 0 and day 21. The general journey of a volunteer is roughly 49 days, where he needs to be actively participating and in touch with the centers.
And with the vaccine in late-stage development, we've been getting a lot of questions from listeners about when exactly we would see this roll out. So when do you think, do you have an idea as to when we could possibly see a coronavirus vaccine by Sinopharm?
All of us are working together to ensure, we have access to the vaccine as soon as possible. But we want to ensure that whatever we bring is definitely tested rigorously. But having seen the initial results, especially the phase 1 and phase 2 results, and the initial response from the 15,000 volunteers, we can definitely say by end of this year or by early Q1 of 2021, we will definitely have a potential vaccine, at least definitely in the United Arab Emirates.
That's great news. And I'm guessing because there's a lot of talk saying, why not get a trial now when it's free? Because when it becomes official vaccine, it's going to be expensive. Have we sort of penciled in some ideas? Because we've just heard in Australia that they're going to make it COVID-19 vaccine free. I'm sure it's too early to talk about this, but how confident are we with the functions at the moment of how we are progressing?
So in terms of accessibility, I think we addressed it. But in terms of pricing, I agree with you. I mean, it is currently too early. All of us are just focused on ensuring the clinical execution of this trial. Definitely, there are multiple factors that play on price. It's the production capacity, the markets that it's available. I believe it's too early. Perhaps in the next month or so, we should have more definite answers to that one.
Okay. Now, you've been monitoring your patients. We've heard some news developing that phase 1 and 2 were very, very well done over in China with Sinopharm. But how's the response been from the volunteers in terms of side effects and how they've been doing so far? Are we confident? Have we got any updates from that?
So far, till date, across 3 different centers, in terms of all the volunteers vaccinated, we do not have any adverse serious reactions. Neither was there any adverse serious reactions captured in phase 1 and phase 2. And generally, the response from all volunteers is extremely positive. And there's a lot of, let's call it participation from these volunteers, because they all want to participate in this journey to find a cure. Everyone is frustrated, the fact that this keeps coming on and on. You've seen, I know you discussed the situation in Wuhan. Unless we have a preventive mechanism in terms of protection, this will keep coming on, because we can keep testing, but eventually there needs to be a cure.
So let's delve more into the medical aspect of this. The human body obviously produces antibodies when it fights off an infection, and this process helps it build immunity. Can you elaborate more on how the antibodies work and how can they appear faster or more swiftly in those patients?
So antibodies, like I think I mentioned it earlier, vaccines, it sort of develops immunity by imitating an infection.
Yeah.
And when you imitate an infection, what it does is generally, the immune system uses several tools. Blood contains RBC and white blood cells. It's through these white blood cells you have certain B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. These are responsible for your antibody, and every human being is different. And that's the reason why we want to, through these clinical trials and through a diverse ethnic population, want to see the impact on how one's human body responds and how much fold increase it occurs in each individual.
I've got to ask you for this because I'm sure there's lots of listeners out there thinking, okay, now is my time. I'm so confident with what Ashish has told us just now. I want to go for that trial. Are there any pre-requirements? Because from what we've read is that they should be not having any other medical conditions such as hypertension and diabetes. Are we correct in assuming that?
So all volunteers above the 18 years of age and healthy individuals are definitely allowed to participate. Even though they are hypertensive and diabetic, as long as it's controlled at the time of the dose, it's absolutely fine. There are certain prerequisites in terms of if they are undergoing any sort of therapy, cancer therapy. Yes, there are exceptions. But generally, anyone who is 18 years and above and is healthy and is not coronavirus positive at that time definitely can participate. All you need to do is just go to the website forhumanity.ae and register your name, and definitely we'll set up an appointment for that.
Now, I'd like to get your thoughts, final concluding remarks, because we've been airing this on our show in terms of, look, it's our collective responsibility. The virus is not over yet. The threat still remains. Your message to the general public who think it's okay to take off the masks now because the virus is no longer there. It must be a shock to your system when you see this and hear this. Your message to them, because you're very focused in this big battle against the spread of COVID-19.
Being an individual who was coronavirus positive in May, I know the sort of impact it has on an individual and also especially the family members. It's hard for other people to experience it because to them it would be just a statistic. But having experienced it and lived through it, it's not that easy, and definitely people need to appreciate that. And I think it's a collective self-responsibility of maintaining social distancing, protective masks, until perhaps the world has a cure. And we are working towards that, but we need a joint participation in this exercise.
Well, we wish you all the very best with the G42's quest to find and complete that clinical trial, the phase 3 trial of the COVID-19. And thank you very much for joining us on the Morning Majlis. And we look forward to hearing more from you at a later stage.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was Ashish Koshy, the CEO of G42 Healthcare, as the United Arab Emirates is spearheading the quest to find that vaccine, as we were one of the first countries to be hosting the phase 3 trials of the vaccine developed by Sinopharm. But we'll be right back after the short break. If you'd like to send us your thoughts, questions and responses, text lines remain open. 4215.
Pulse 95. Between local lines. Notes from the Emirate.
Real estate development company Arada in Sharjah, in cooperation with the FUN and Sharjah Media Arts for Youth and Children, just announced that it would launch next Thursday the Sharjah International Film Festival for Children and Youth within the movie nights in Al Jada project by choosing films for a group of Arab directors. Sheikh Sultan, His Excellency Sheikh Sultan bin Ahmed Al Qasimi, chairman of Arada, affirmed that this new initiative represents the first stage in our partnership with SIF, as it is consistent with our plans in Arada to build modern societies that inspire their residents.
His Excellency Sheikh Sultan bin Ahmed said that Sharjah was chosen last year as one of the best child-friendly cities by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and today we're proud of our cooperation with the SIF, the Sharjah International Film Festival for Children and Youth, to contribute towards enriching the experience of families and young people in the Emirates.
Yes, and for her part, Sheikh Jawahir bint Abdullah Al-Qasmi, director of FUN and the Sharjah SIFF, said, "We are happy to expand the audience base for our film screenings. We expect that these evenings will become among the most prominent social and cultural events in Sharjah, and we are confident that our partnership with Arada will positively reflect on the efforts led by FUN, especially as we start from the Greater Sharjah Project, which was established by His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al Qasmi, Supreme Council Member and ruler of Sharjah, to ensure that the Emirate remains the capital of culture and art in the region and the larger world. And the role of film in enriching culture, in promoting empathy, understanding, it cannot be understated. And initiatives like these certainly promote that perception.
Oh, it definitely does. And it's really good to see how people come together, because it's a very important common interest. People love watching films together, watching films from different parts of the world as well. And Al Jada itself, what a brilliant spot to go down to.
Exactly.
It's got to make it onto your weekend list. If you haven't got much planned and want a different experience, you can definitely do that.
Absolutely. And if you want to stay at home, you can still watch films with your family and loved ones at siff.ae. And they have so many categories to choose from: youth films, feature films, family films, and even refugees stories films. So it's another great way also to get a home experience of movie watching.
Apart from that, there's, when Champions League is on, there's lots of people who want to go and catch the films, catch the games at a different venue, saying, okay, let's go down to this restaurant, let's go down to this facility. But the problem is people are still worried about the social distancing element, and they do not want a big gathering. But if you want a safer place and something more unique, Al Jadda it is, because tonight is going to be a big game. Bayern Munich versus Lyon, and that's taking place at 11 p.m. tonight. And what you have to do is, we have a drive-in cinema here in Sharjah at Al Jadda.
Yeah.
That apart from showing the films, 11 p.m. is going to be kick-off time. So you can go down with your cars, park up, watch the game, tune in onto the radio frequency, and you can listen to the commentary and the game itself. I have to tell you this is going to be the most exciting Champions League. I'm sure Omar Adouri, who is, shout out to him, he's probably tuned in at the moment and listening to us. He did well at boxing again yesterday, by the way, just pointed out. If Champions League this sort of time around, Bayern Munich, the form, the flair, the energy they're bringing on the pitch is such a delight to watch. They shell-shook Barcelona. They took them out of the Champions League, but now it's going to be Paris SG was very good, very impressive yesterday with a 3-0 win over Leipzig. If it's Bayern versus Paris SG in the final, favourites definitely Bayern Munich, but this Champions League is boiling up to be a cracker. It is going to be such an amazing Champions League. And from a usual sports fan, I have to tell you this, and I'm going to get a lot of haters. When it's the two-leg system, I get fatigued. I get tired. I lose my concentration. You're constantly thinking of the aggregate score. But because of how fast and intense the World Cup has been, usually is with the knockout features, I'm glad, and I really like the one-leg encounter in the Champions League. It adds to its element and intensity, saying, hey, now or never. You play good, you survive. You don't play that good, turn up bad on the day, it's book your flights home. So
certainly do. And before the Champions League semi-final game today at 11 at Al Jadda, you can also catch the film at 8 p.m. the film of Jumanji.
Oh, The Rock.
The Rock and Jack Black.
I have to tell you that The Rock.
It's at 8 p.m. Every night. There's a film in Al Jadda at 8 p.m. So today's pick will be Jumanji: The Next Level.
Interesting pick. Do you know why?
Why?
Because The Rock has just celebrated his first-year anniversary of being married to the love of his life, and he's actually posted it on his Instagram. I came across whilst I was browsing and deciding on the stories to talk about today, and it popped up on the newsfeed. It's not that I religiously follow The Rock, it's just popped up, and it was a very nice video that he just posted on his IGTV, and Jumanji, what a perfect way to join in a celebration down at Al Jadda. And right after that, it is going to be Bayern Munich versus Lyon, one of the French giants and German giants, and the German giants stand in the way of making it an all-French final. Would have loved to get Omar Adouri's thoughts. I'm sure he'll be texting in right now. And you can share your thoughts and opinions about Bayern Munich and who's going to win the Champions League. 4215 text lines remain open. We'll be right back. And then up next, Ahmed, we're talking about a big entertainment show.
That's right. Stay tuned to the Morning Majlis.
Pulse 95. You're listening to Pulse 95. Pulse 95.
It's Pulse 95.